Hi, it's Jeremy Shatton from An Earful. Welcome back to Discover Music with An Earful. This is monthly listening for February 2025. If this is your first time here, welcome. You've come to the right place if you want to hear the most eclectic collection of music in the podcast universe. February has been a very busy month, musically speaking. So many releases, so many things to do. And I'm going to talk about as much of it as I can. I know things are looking bleak, but we look for music to nourish us and help us get through the days, put one foot in front of the other, and do what we need to do to make a difference and survive. So coming up, we're going to talk about some live experiences, which is one of the best ways to get nourishment from music. In a minute on Discover Music with an Earful. Listening parties are getting more and more popular. Every month, I attend probably one or two virtual listening parties on Bandcamp, where you can be in the chat with the artists themselves and hear them talk about making the album, ask them questions they may answer. It really is an enjoyable way of hearing the album a few days before release and getting some context and background around the album. Then there's also in-person listening parties, like last year when we went to hear Billie Eilish's new album with 20,000 of our closest friends at the Barclays Center. This year, on February 3rd, we headed out to East Williamsburg, Billie's Record Salon, a place I've been wanting to get to for a while. This is run by the same people that own Baby's All Right, Nightclub 101, other places that are improving the musical life of New York City. The record store is indeed fantastic. There were so many things I was flipping through there. But I was not there to buy records. I was there to hear the new Youth Lagoon album, Rarely Do I Dream. So a few singles have been released, but this was our first chance to hear the whole album. And Trevor Powers, who performs as Youth Lagoon, was there. The place was packed, and it got very warm in there. But we all sat with Trevor, listened to the album, and it is absolutely gorgeous. You're going to hear more about it later. But the short version is that he found a box of VHS tapes from his childhood, and he began sifting through them and realizing he could weave some of the voices and themes on those tapes into a new batch of songs. Rarely Do I Dream is a great follow-up to Heaven is a Junkyard, which was on my top 25 in 2023. And Trevor Powers himself turned out to be a wonderful presence. He chatted with people, he took photos with people, he signed things. He talked very honestly about making the record and putting himself out there in such a vulnerable fashion. Just a really great artist. And we will hear more about that later in the show. But when we come back, a very different kind of music experience in person. Just a few days after the Youth Lagoon listening party on February 6th, I went out to National Sawdust to hear the New York premiere of Michael Hirsch's new opera, And We Each. This is a collaboration with a poet named Shane McCrae. It featured Ah Young Hong, the great soprano who is a constant collaborator of Hirsch's, always fantastic. Jesse Blumberg, a baritone, was in the cast, and it was conducted by Tito Munoz. The music was provided by Emmy Ferguson on flute, Gleb Kasenovich on bass clarinet, Ada Cridler on violin, Leah Asher on viola, and Coleman Itzkoff on cello. That gives you an idea of the sound world, along with the two voices. Slightly hilarious because Hirsch introduced the piece by talking about how my other operas have featured violence and externalized suffering. This is almost the opposite. Now, if you listen to Papaya, which was on my top 25 for 2024, you'll know what he's talking about with the violence and externalized suffering. However, this was no walk in the park. It was a pretty intense piece. The singers were extraordinary, though. They came together in various ways on stage while they were putting things together. They had cloth, they were making face masks and putting almost bandages on people. Really, absolutely an incredible piece. To give you an idea of the words they were singing, there were moments of romance in it, but it was also a sense of being holding together against external forces. So maybe the suffering is externalized from the characters, but there's still suffering in this universe. Michael Hirsch is just fearless, uncompromising, and the integration of the vocals and that string chamber ensemble that he put together was like nothing I've ever heard. It was so completely seamless. Really an extraordinary composer, an extraordinary performance. Give me an idea of the lyrical content. Part of the words from section 7. I heard a woman go under the train, and the sound must have been the train crushing her body. But the sound sounded like a piece of paper tearing. That was what it sounded like. Then screaming. And the screaming was the sound I turned to. Not exactly a lack of violence or externalized pain. I think that Hirsch and McCrae are great collaborators. We look to art to do this, to put us face to face with things that are uncomfortable. And that the way that the nameless characters in the opera clung to each other and used cheesecloth and clay to make molds of their body parts that looked similar to bandages, it was just unforgettable. Behind them was a projection of dancers that added to the mystique and movement of the piece. Extremely powerful performance. I hope that they record this because I would like to listen to it again. When we come back, one more concert, maybe some suffering but no violence, in a minute on Discover Music with an Earful. I've been listening to Faye Webster since 2019 when I fell for Atlanta Millionaires Club. Her next two albums, I Know I'm Funny, Haha, and Underdressed at the Symphony were both on my top 25. She really is a favorite of mine. Just fantastic stuff. Melancholy pop songs with a hypnotic smoothness that I just can't stop listening to. They are so good. And I've never seen her live. So last year, I took the plunge and bought tickets to see her at Radio City Music Hall months in advance. And on February 26th, it finally came true. I always knew I would see her sometime. I didn't think it would be in such a grand place with screaming fans, because in the time since I started listening to Faye Webster, she's become very popular, starting on TikTok. And it was hilarious because she doesn't use TikTok. She's not interested in social media very much. And people started using her songs there to soundtrack their moments. And she became huge. Anyway, finally got to see her. It was just great. Mai Ihara, a Japanese singer-songwriter guitarist, opened up, and she was great too. Her album from a couple years ago, Ampersand, is really worth checking out. Light reggae, a little bossa nova, some Steely Dan slickness. I liked it a lot, and she was a very good performer, opening for a crowd that was not ready to learn something new necessarily. They wanted to hear Faye Webster, but they were very respectful for the most part and gave her a good airing. It was really great. Faye Webster has a full production, Underdressed at the Symphony. The theme is sort of this laundry room with washers and dryers on stage and a giant t-shirt on which things were projected. But the best part is just her. She's a great performer. She seemed incredibly engaged, dancing around the stage, playing guitar solos in front of her bandmates who were seated behind her. So she's definitely the star, but they were terrific musicians. There's a pedal steel player who's fantastic. The drummer was extraordinary. He did a drum solo that had people screaming for more. It really was just so fantastic. I'm so glad I finally got to see Faye Webster. She is definitely not underdressed for Radio City Music Hall, which I also have to say, not having been there for several years, maybe even decades, it's still great. The sound is good, the lighting is good, the projections are good, the seats are comfortable, and the staff is friendly, welcoming, and ready to help. A great experience. This was a bit of a splurge for us, ticket price-wise, but it wasn't too bad, and it was totally worth it. time to get to some recordings, and we've got a lot of them, so buckle up and we will get to them after the break. Our first recording this month is a major new work by Anna Thorvaldsdottir, Ubique. That's Ubique. Truly wonderful work. It's also part of Claire Chase's Density 2036 project, which has her commissioning, performing, and recording new music for flute in all the years leading up to 2036, the 100th anniversary of Edgar Varèse's Density 21.5, one of the pioneering works for solo flute. This piece features Chase on flute, bass flute, and contrabass flute, along with Corey Smith on piano, Katinka Klein, and Seth Parker Woods on cellos. There's also fixed media or pre-prepared electronics. Everything just sounds fantastic. It's consistently fascinating work for 45 minutes. Here's an excerpt from the second movement just to give you an idea of what this fascinating piece sounds like. Ubique by Anna Thorvaldsdottir with Claire Chase on flute. Didn't that just sound great? Aren't you intrigued? I've been listening to this since January, and I'm just so glad you can all hear it now. Anna Thorvaldsdottir, Ubique, with Claire Chase, Corey Smith, Katinka Klein, and Seth Parker Woods. Extraordinary recording. Speaking of the flute, our next album is by Laura Cox, the great flute player from Talk Ensemble and elsewhere. It's been delightful to have them perform with Talia Ensemble in some recent concerts. In 2022, they put out an album called Field Anatomies. It was on my top 25. Just an incredible collaboration with several composers. Now we have their second solo album, Fathom, spelled F-A-T-H-M. The album features their improvised compositions for flute, voice, etc. It just sounds incredible. I'm going to play you an excerpt of the second track, Illinois, which has a punk energy, a big band swing, and a sound that just involves you. Parts of the album use incredibly extended techniques. It could be challenging for some, but I find once you just let yourself into the world, it will invite you in and keep you there. Fathom is just an extraordinary work. Take a listen to Illinois, and I hope you'll listen to the rest. Wild stuff from Laura Cox. Fathom, out now. And if you act fast, you can get a handmade LP. This is limited to 50 copies, made with sand from Lake Michigan and the New York Atlantic coast. Wax and resin. I don't know how this works. Each LP is unique, it says here. As they use natural elements, they will degrade over time. Do not worry, that is the nature of things. $27 gets you this wonderful thing. I'd love to get a copy of it, and hopefully I'll get that chance. Next, we have the latest album from Lei Liang, wonderful composer who I've featured here before. This new album is called Dewey, and it's a collection of chamber works that touches on Liang's Chinese-American heritage and just his absolute mastery of instrumental textures and composition. I'm going to play you a bit of the opening track, Vis-a-Vis. This features Wu Man on the pipa and Stephen Schick on percussion, two masters of their instruments. Lei Liang's Vis-a-Vis. Here it comes. Vis-a-Vis by Lei Liang from his album Dewey. I love the combination of Schick's percussion and Wu Man's pipa on that piece. It's just really excellent the way he puts those instruments together and those sounds, synthesizing the textures and the melodic parts of things. A really great collection all around. Now, last episode, when I mentioned New Thread Quartet's Saxifraga album, I forgot to talk about their first album, Plastic Facts, which was also really good. That album included a composition by our next artist, Richard Carrick, who is a composer and pianist and the founder of the Either Or Ensemble. Done lots of great things over the years. He has a new album out called The Atlas. It's performed by Either Or, and it features Carrick on extended piano. It makes some really interesting noises. The other musicians are Jennifer Choi and Paula Garcia on violins, John Popham on cello, and Cal Sugatsky on viola. Really great album. I'm going to play you an excerpt from the opening track, Compass, from The Atlas by Richard Carrick. Richard Carrick's Compass from his portrait album, The Atlas. Probably my favorite of his portrait albums. It's the third one. Next, we have a new album by Reiko Futing, whose Mechtild was an extraordinary opera that was on my top 25 in 2023. Now he has an album of chamber work called Distant Violin Sound. It really is an extraordinary collection with some of the best ensembles and musicians playing it. We have Longleash, Miranda Cookson, pianist Jing Yang. I mean, these are just some incredible musicians, and his work is so good. We're going to hear an excerpt from Act, Abstain, From, which incorporates material that he absorbs from Heinrich Schutz's 1627 work Da Pacem Domine. And he puts that together with Hannah Arendt. That's where the title comes from. She said, "Could the activity of thinking as such be among the conditions that make humans abstain from evil doing?" From that, Futing gets us to act, abstain, from. And this is performed by the wonderful Unheard Of Ensemble. That's one of the reasons I picked this one to excerpt, because I'm a champion of their work. They do great stuff. The Unheard Of Ensemble playing Reiko Futing's Act, Abstain, from his album Distant Violin Sound, coming up right now. Just a touch of Act, Abstain, From by Reiko Futing from his album Distant Violin Sound. I think you can hear a little bit of Schutz's pre-Baroque or early Baroque astringency, a wonderful combination with Futing's conception. He really is just great. What a good album that is. Now we're going to circle back to Iceland for an album called Equora by a duo calling themselves Mystery Sonata. This is Zachary Karetin on violin, Mina Gajek on piano. They record a number of Icelandic works here, including Reminiscence by Anna Thorvaldsdottir, which was originally recorded by Julia Den Boer on a fine album a few years ago. But we also get the world premiere recording of Refractions, Re/Fractions, by Maria Hold Marken Sigfúsdóttir. It's a two-movement work. It was partially commissioned by a Bach festival. You can hear some of that in here. So let's hear a little bit of Movement 2 from Sigfúsdóttir's Refractions, performed by Mystery Sonata. Refractions Part 2 by Maria Hold Marken Sigfúsdóttir, performed by Mystery Sonata from their album Equora. Equora, the title track, is another Sigfúsdóttir composition, and it's really cool. Other composers featured on Ikora are Daniel Bjarnason and Paul Ragnar Paulsen. Fine collection from Mystery Sonata. We're going to take a little break, just give you a chance to reset your compass before we come back with some very different sounds on Discover Music with an Earful. And I am back, and we're going to start off with a truly fascinating release from Party Perfect, who's always fascinating, putting out wild electronic stuff, and this is no different. Jan June's Party Perfect issue 11 called Cut Off. Cut Off refers to daku, or cutouts, CDs and cassettes that were sent to China to be used as raw materials, recyclables essentially, and they were cut to make them unplayable, but not very successfully because you could get most of the music off of them. That's how a lot of people got music that was otherwise censored in China, including Jan June, who was a rock critic back then. Now, this piece sounds nothing like anything you've heard before. It's very sparse, very spare. The collection comes with a zine that poetically describes the whole ecosystem of these cut-offs or cutouts that they had in China. It's beautifully designed by Secret Rhizo Club, and I highly recommend picking up this package so you can get the CD, which will not be cut off, and the printed copy of the zine. $25 from Party Perfect. It's very cool stuff. Give a listen to an excerpt from track 4, which is called Disc 072-133. 15 minutes, 19 seconds. That's how long it is, but you're just going to hear a little taste of it right now. Jan June's Cut Off on the Party Perfect label. Fascinating project, as I said. Now we go from China to Japan. The Kirigirisu Recordings label in Tokyo, they have a new release that I really love by an artist calling themselves Daborabo. This was recorded over several years, 2017 to 2024. These little fragments they were putting together, and they finally decided to release them. It's a very cool limited edition CDR if you want to get the physical product. Here's an excerpt from Afternoon Swim by Daborabo from the album Dream Lesson. Isn't that just lovely? The whole Dream Lesson album by Daborabo is filled with such moments. Highly recommended. Next we have Pink Must. This is a duo made up of Mary Morees Rubio. Morees is a name you'll just see everywhere if you look closely enough. And Lynn Avery. Really cool album. Some of it sounds a bit like glitchy indie folk, electronica. Some of it's more abstract than that. We're going to hear one of the more song-like pieces. It's called Disappointed, and I just love the hazy, gauzy textures combined with the passion to communicate that defines a great song. Disappointed by Pink Must from their self-titled debut album. Pink Must, Disappointed from the debut album. Morees also has a collaborative project coming out with Claire Rousset that I'm quite excited about. Keep an eye out for that, or an ear, however you want to do it. Next we have Alex McKay's project. Alex is the bass player with Nation of Language, also plays keyboards with them, but has been releasing music under the name Cutouts since at least 2017. Has a new full-length album out called Snakeskin as Cutouts, and it's really, really great. I'm going to play you an excerpt from a song called Hydra. This does not feature vocals. Most of the songs do, but I just cannot get enough of the groove of this song. It's a little bit like Nine Inch Nails soundtracking Terminator 2, the arcade game on my Game Boy. It just makes you want to shoot cyborgs. So here it is, Hydra from Cutouts on their album Snakeskin. Hydra by Cutouts from their album Snakeskin. Seriously cool stuff. I wish I was able to make it to the release party. It looked like it was a blast. Speaking of blasts, we now have World Making, the debut album from Made Up. This is a Montreal and Toronto-based art pop ensemble. That's how they describe themselves. They use analog and electronic instruments, and they are made up of Vince Verano, E.G. Palermo, Nimrod, and Salvatore Cioffi. I was not familiar with any of those names, but apparently they all release music as themselves. So they're doing something new here together, collaborating as Made Up. World Making is the album, and we're going to hear an excerpt from One Means Nothing to Me. Check it out on Discover Music with an Earful. One Means Nothing to Me by Made Up from their debut album, World Making. They put out an EP back in 2019, but it's taken a little while to come up with the debut album, and I think the time they put into it is very effectively used because it's a great album. It's a lot of fun. Now we're going to hear something from Rarely Do I Dream by Youth Lagoon, which I mentioned at the top when I went to that listening party. As soon as this song started to play in the listening party, I was just swooning. It's called Perfect World, and one thing I'd tell you to pay attention to is the way he combines electronic and acoustic elements. The synthesizers and then the rhythm section and the drums, when they kick in, it just feels so right. And the vocals, he just layers these vocals. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is Perfect World by Youth Lagoon from Rarely Do I Dream. Perfect World, what a perfect song from Rarely Do I Dream, the 5th album under the Youth Lagoon name. Wonderful stuff. See Trevor Powers in concert as Youth Lagoon if you can. Now we're going to come to a second album by one of my favorite artists of recent years, Horse Girl. This is the Chicago to Brooklyn, back to Chicago. Not exactly sure. I think they're in Brooklyn, but they recorded their second album in Chicago with producer Kate Laban, who worked on Wilco's last album and is also a singer-songwriter, performer in their own right. But I think this was a really great collaboration because Horse Girl was able to strip things down sonically to where you really get to hear the interaction between these three players. They're very, very attuned to each other. They write great songs. I happen to love all the wordless choruses. Just really wonderful stuff. It reminds me a little of the Raincoats, but it's now just becoming Horse Girl. They're so great. The name of the album is Phonetics On and On. I have a very short excerpt for you from the song Information Content, and you can really hear the instrumental interaction between the three of them. Check it out. Horse Girl on Discover Music with In Your Pocket. Just a teeny taste of Horse Girl's new sound on Phonetics On and On, their second album. Their first album was on my top 25 in 2022. And this one is just as strong. It's so great. I hope to see them in concert again. I've seen them 3 times in concert, every time outside. I kind of want to see them indoors one of these days. Next, we have an interesting collaboration between Winter, the performing name of Samira Winter, a Brazilian artist who has been mainly based in California over the last few years, making really great stuff. I love the album they put out a while back, and they became friends with a digital shoegaze duo, if you will, from Philadelphia called Hooky. I always thought Hooky was Peter Hook's nickname, but apparently it's also the name of this band. And they've been around for a little while. They became friends. Winter went to Philly and they recorded together and they made an EP. It is filled with 4 very short songs. Nothing is over 2 minutes and 21 seconds. So you'll get to hear a fairly meaty excerpt from one of these, the song In Your Pocket. Coming up. By Winter and Hooky, or Hooky and Winter. The name of the EP is Water Season, and it's really great. You'll probably want to play it 2 or 3 times because, like I said, it's fairly short. But I just love the blend of her ethereal vocals and that digital shoegaze sound. It's pretty dreamy. It's water season around here. Make it so in your residence. In 2023, I shared a fantastic song called Renter, Not a Buyer by the group Dead Gowns. This is the songwriting project of Genevieve Baudin from Maine, and she works with Luke Callock, Nat Baldwin, Peter McLaughlin, Alex Milan, Hamilton Belk, Ricardo Lago Massino, and Eliza Edens on this fantastic full-length debut album, Finally Here, came out in February. It's Summer, I Love You, and I'm Surrounded by Snow, the long-awaited debut album by Dead Gowns, recorded over the last few years, finished up for 2025's Delectation. It's a terrific album. Some of the songs on the previous EP are here, but everything blends together marvelously. And Genevieve is really ripping into her voice, really learning all the ways it can be used. And there's just extraordinary singing throughout the album. I also love her guitar style. Beautiful guitar sounds all over this album. Let's hear an excerpt from Bad Habit by Dead Gowns. great is that sound? So raw-boned yet refined at the same time. Absolutely love this album. I recently took a look back at the last 10 years to see what were the highest ranking debut albums in my top 25. Just get an idea of what that looked like. And now I'm thinking about 2025. What are the high ranking debut albums going to be? Dead Gowns is going to be on there, that's for sure. And so is our next artist, who I had hoped to share last month, but it took a little time to get it. And now you're going to get to hear, I talked about it, but you're going to get to hear an excerpt from Kerosene by Melissa Mary Ahern. She has been working with Sufjan Stevens for a while, singing on his records, but this is her first album all on her own, under her own name, doing everything, and it's so good. I can't get enough of it. It's addictive. You're going to hear an excerpt from The Truth by Melissa Mary Ahern from her album Kerosene.
Find a new stranger to love and be exactly what they need. I won't lie till the truth is buried deep in the ground like some old western outlaw. I'll find a new town to ride out to and get lost in the crowd, but no more running. There's a pain in my heart that needs healing, and who am I fooling? Wherever you go, there you are. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth that no one tells you. That's the truth. That's the truth.
That's it. That's The Truth by Melissa Mary Ahern from her album Kerosene. On that song, she was working with a producer called Toth, T-O-T-H. And I love in the liner notes, they said they wanted to turn him into a one-man Jordanaires on that song. The Truth. The whole album is just fantastic. It's so, so good. I highly recommend it. You need debut albums in your life to remind you that there are people out there making great music all the time, coming almost out of nowhere, it seems. Although, as I said, she has released singles before and worked with Sufjan Stevens. And that will do it for this month. Thank you so much for listening. If you're looking for other activities of An Earfuls, you can look for Best of 2024 Electronic, which I published in the middle of last month. Lots of great stuff on there. So many good things came out last year in all genres. Right now, I am working on the hip hop, R&B, and reggae best of for 2024. That will come when it comes. But I wanted you to hear this new music, 2025's new music, as soon as possible. So that's it for February 2025. Once again, thank you so much for listening. All the music you heard has been ethically sourced from the artists and labels. Thanks to all of them for their help. Find links to everything in the show notes, which will also include a Spotify playlist. The interstitial tracks are by me, circa 1984 to 1986, with Andy Gilchrist on occasional guitar. Thanks as always to the Droplets, Holly Miranda, Am Parsley, and Chris Maxwell for my theme song. Find me at anearful.substack.com if you are so moved to take out a paid subscription. That really helps keep this thing going. You can also find me on all the socials. Please share, rate, and review this podcast. That's the only way we can continue this movement to reveal the finest music of our time. Once again, this is Jeremy Shatton for An Earful. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you next month.